Hello, hello, this is me again, Rachel, the Modern Shaman, and this is going to be part two, or the follow-up video to one I just did about psychic blocks. Before I jump in, I will remind you that these videos are always accessible on my YouTube channel, The Modern Shaman, so just subscribe and you can, have access to all of those. And also, if you'd like to talk with me, if you have some personal questions or things going on and you need a one-on-one session or Skype or phone or whatever, you can connect with me on my website, which is themodernshaman.net. All right, so let's jump in here. So the first video that I just did was about, again, psychic blocks, things that block us from being able to connect with spirit. These are energetic blockages, but a lot of times they're triggered by actual physical events in our life or past lives or the lives of others. And we're storing that energetic blockage in our chakra system, in our body somewhere. Typically, what I see in clients is it's typically a throat chakra, heart chakra, or a solar plexus chakra issue with why we're not being able to fully connect. So once that block is unblocked, surprise, surprise, but you get all of this stuff coming in. Okay, I can speak from my personal experience and also experiences of my clients and people that I've helped through this process. So when we say to spirit, I'm here, I'm open, I'm ready to receive, and we unblock our channels and our chakras are completely aligned, they're completely open and transparent, and there's no hindrances in those funnels. The spirit's just sending the light and the info all in. It can be overwhelming to receive all this information. Some people just experience life like this, it's very much a feeling of being on the autistic spectrum, something where there's so much coming in and there's not a lot filtering it for you. When you get to a place like that spiritually, and you start receiving, you start remembering all of your past lives, you start receiving messages in your ears, you start seeing visions, you start getting dreams, you start having lucid dreams, you start having premonitions, you start smelling things that that aren't really there in real life, but all of a sudden you smell a cigarette and you know that there's a spirit there, or you start seeing UFOs, or you start seeing energy blobs around people. It can be freaky. It can scare you if it floods in like that. And honestly, a lot of times it does. Now, I don't say that to scare you, but to let you know that you're not alone in that process, and there are ways to manage that. Yes, and there's peace in that. So, first thing I will say is the realization that was helpful to me is the reminder that you were always in free will, and that spirit abides by free will when they're working with you in this three-dimensional world that we're currently living in this incarnation, in your body, using your mind. They work through free will. So you can set boundaries in your free will, and they will follow those regulations that you've set up. I've said this in previous videos, but setting up a structure that you feel comfortable with, that you would like spirit to speak to you through, is essential, because it gives you a sense of control and a sense that things are not out of control. I think the reason we fear this is we feel like, oh my gosh, am I going to be out of control? Is spirit going to take over my body and start we don't know. And so we fear that we're not going to have any control in this. And we're going to see things we don't want to see. And we're going to, that was a big fear of mine when I started doing homicide and missing person work, because I was remote viewing. So I would be putting my consciousness in the body of that killer. And I didn't want to experience those deaths. I had a big fear of I don't want to go through those death scenes. I don't want to have that in my mind, that traumatic event. I don't want to relive that experience in their body and in their mind. So I had structure that I set up specifically with spirit, where I said, I don't want to be in that person's body during the death scene. I want you to pan out so I can experience it without being in a physical body during that time. Because emotionally, that was a space that was more, it was less active and more a space of awareness and all understanding and all presence of those events. So that was helpful to me, and Spirit's always abided by that. Unless I wanted and asked, unless I made a purpose to be in a body at a specific time. If I was looking for, if I was trying to find out the murder weapon or something and I needed to stay in the body a little longer, something like that. But all that to say, those boundaries I set up and Spirit abided by them. Also, when I remember this, when I first unblocked that huge past life block, I started hearing my clairaudience got so refined. It was like I could hear what everyone was thinking, and I could hear what I was thinking on multiple levels. Like I could hear my higher self, my angelic body, I could hear all these levels, and it just was like too much. Like I felt like my head was going to explode. And for some reason, it didn't dawn on me to say, be quiet, speak to me once at a time. But once I said that, then Spirit did that. And I received messages one at a time. So that was hugely helpful for me, just to realize I can say, only speak to me one at a time. If there's more than one spirit wanting to talk to me, I say you have to stand behind each other in a line. I don't want to see you all at once to where I feel overwhelmed. I feel their energy there. I know there's more than one entity there that wants to communicate. If I'm, say, being a medium and communicating with spirits, I may feel a big group around, but I only want to focus on one and channeling one at a time. That helps me not to feel overwhelmed. So I set that boundary for them to stay in a line, and I only want to focus on one at a time. Also, when I was speaking to my higher self and levels of different consciousness, and social complexes, if I was speaking to like a social complex of a different dimensional space, a lot of times the messages come in so compacted with information, like a big block of info, and it's funneling down into this little Rachel brain and this little Rachel intuition, and it's funneling down, and it can feel really tight. And so I would say to Spirit, repeat the message until I've got it, until you're aware that I'm clear on what you're trying to say. Because I kept feeling like I was just madly, if I was channeling, I would just be madly journaling this stuff, trying to say it, because there was so much that was coming in that I had this feeling like I had to get it out really quickly before the next piece of information came in. So I set that boundary, and I just said to Spirit, repeat yourself until you know that I have received it. And just repeat it at a steady pace, at not an overwhelming, like, but just make sure that you repeat that information that's important until I get that information, until it's obvious that I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Don't give it to me, in such a quick pace that I am not ready to move on to the next thing because I haven't fully understood the first point, if that makes sense. And they've followed that boundary. Some other boundaries that people have set up are, and again, it depends on how you receive information. Some people that see entities very visually, and it freaks them out, like they see something out of the corner of their eye, or they see actual people and spirits and things like that. They have set up structures like, I want to see the shadow, but I don't want to see the face, or whatnot. Or I want to hear, I'll hear the voice, but I don't want to see an image of it if it freaks you out to see it. You'll tune into your own kind of desires of how you want to connect. If you feel, a lot of times people feel energy and feel the presence of another entity. And so you can set up guidelines that way to say, okay, I'm comfortable with you touching my body, like on my arms, but don't go down. Don't touch my legs, or don't, I'm comfortable in this area, so if you want to speak to me and you want to let me know you're present, touch this shoulder. And that's the space I'm comfortable with, or whatnot. If you ever feel like spirit is not abiding by those rules, then tell them to leave. They have to abide by your free will. So know that. There's great power in that awareness, and reminding yourself of that awareness, that these structures are things that you can set up that benefit you. It's not like you can't change them if you feel later more comfortable with, at the beginning, I didn't want to see aliens. It freaked me out. And when I started seeing things like that, I had a gut reaction that was freaky. So I didn't want to see them. So I said, okay, you can speak to me, I can hear you, but I don't want to see you in front of me. I don't want you coming into my window. I don't want to, that puts me in a different energy of fear, and then I can't receive the messages clearly. So I set that up as a boundary, that I wasn't comfortable with using my vision in that way, but that I was comfortable using my clairaudience and speaking in that way. So again, getting those structures for yourself and setting them up, and knowing that energetically, if it's too much, ask them to back off. If you feel like you're crying constantly because there's so much energy of the whole that's coming through, when you start connecting and really connecting with someone else's energy, for instance, when I do this and I'm remote viewing, or I'm using the collective energy of the whole to collect and feel the emotions and the mental body of a grouping of people, it can feel very overwhelming, because literally you're feeling a bunch of emotion. A group of 100 people emotionally dealing with something is going to feel heavier in your body. It's going to feel really intense. So, I could just say, okay, I'm going to feel this just for a second. Let me feel it for a second, but I don't want to hold on to that energy. And so I would set that boundary of like, let me feel it so I can identify with that feeling. I can know what's going on, but then pull me out of it quickly so that I don't hold on to that emotional state. Because sometimes when I am working with a client, or I'm, going into their body, all of a sudden I'll just start bawling. I'm so connected to that energy, and when they're feeling something really intensely, it just completely runs through my system as well. And a lot of times that will be other people's experience too, when they're open to this, and it can be scary. So setting those boundaries of, I'm comfortable with it for a minute, but then help me move out of that and not attach to that emotional state of being. I don't want to feel depressed constantly because of some cataclysmic event that I tuned into and energetically felt what people were feeling. I want to be able to move out of that energy and then move into a healing energy. For, you know what I'm saying? I want to have control over that energetic experience. And you can. So set up those boundaries for yourself. This video went longer than I always try and keep them under 10 minutes, but this one's a little longer. But if you have any specific questions, all of these things are so individualized because we experience spirit in different ways. But if you're having any specific issues, you can always, like I said, set up an appointment with me, and we can talk about it and kind of look at your individual blocks or your individual ways that you're feeling that spirit's coming in that you want to help set up structures for. There's structures to not feel overwhelmed, and then there's also structures that help you communicate, like setting up an alphabet for spirit to speak to you through, learning that way that you best communicate with spirit and the interdimensional realms, and using your extrasensory perception and refining that speak and that language. All right. Blessings to you. Love you all.